Welcome back. Let the day go. Tonight, we travel. We are going back more than 4,000 years to a kingdom that rose along the same river as Egypt, that built more pyramids than Egypt, that conquered Egypt itself, and that the world somehow forgot. The Kingdom of Kush. Long before the pharaohs of Thebes and Memphis claimed the Nile, long before the pyramids of Giza touched the sky, there was a civilization to the south, a land of gold and iron, of warrior queens, of temples rising from the desert like prayers made stone. Tonight, we are not talking about conquest. We are not talking about pharaohs as you know them. Tonight, we walk through the palm groves of Kerma. We stand before the pyramids of Meroe. We hear the Nile as it sounded 4,000 years ago. We find out what it felt like to be alive in the Kingdom of Kush. Settle in. Close your eyes when you are ready. The story begins now. Imagine the Nile. Not the Nile of the Egyptian delta, wide and flat and tamed by centuries of irrigation. The Nile farther south, wilder here. The river cuts through bands of granite and black volcanic rock. There are cataracts here, 6 of them, places where the water churns, white against stone, and boats must stop and portage. The first cataract, just south of Aswan, was the traditional border between Egypt and the land the Egyptians called Tarseti, the land of the bow. We know it now as Nubia, and at its heart, the Kingdom of Kush. The air is drier here than in the delta. The heat is different, sharper. The acacia trees cast thin shadows. The doom palms bend toward the river. The soil near the Nile is black and rich. Away from the river, it turns to gold sand and red rock within 100 paces. Everything that lives in this part of the world lives because of that narrow band of green along the water. In the morning, the rising sun hits the eastern desert first. The sand glows pink, then orange, then a white so bright it hurts to look at it. By the time the light reaches the river, the fishermen are already on the water. Their boats are made of bundled papyrus reeds, the same design their ancestors used 1,000 years before. They cast nets woven from palm fiber. The Nile perch here grow large. The crocodiles grow larger. The people of Kush learned to read the river the way their northern neighbors read the stars, knowing where the current hit a sandbank, where the hippos gathered at dusk, where the water ran deep and cold even in the hottest months. The land itself taught patience. The annual flood came later here than in Egypt, and it was less predictable. The Kushites could not simply wait for the river to do the work. They built canals. They dug reservoirs. They learned to read water as a language, and they built their first great city at a place called Kerma. Kerma was not a small settlement. By 1700 BCE, it was one of the largest cities in the Nile Valley, Egyptian-controlled territories included. The city stretched for more than a kilometer along the river. Its center was dominated by a massive mud brick structure known today as the Western Defufa. Defufa is a Nubian word. It means a building of unburned brick. This single structure rose 3 stories high, its walls sloping gently inward as they climbed, the architecture distinctively, unmistakably Kushite. Not Egyptian, not borrowed, their own. Imagine approaching Kerma from the river. The Defufa would have been visible for miles across the flat floodplain. Inside its walls, narrow staircases led to upper chambers. Religious ceremonies took place here. Processions, burials of the city's rulers in great tumulus graves that spread outward from the Defufa like ripples in water. Some of these burial mounds were 90 meters across, larger than many Egyptian pyramids of the same period. The people of Kerma were master potters. Their ceramics were so fine, so distinctive, tulip-shaped beakers with red polished exteriors and black interiors, that archaeologists can trace Kerma's trade routes simply by finding their pottery. And they found it everywhere, in Egyptian tombs, in Levantine ports, as far east as the Red Sea coast. Kerma did not simply trade with its neighbors, it dominated trade. Gold from the eastern desert, ivory from the south, ebony, incense, leopard skins, ostrich feathers, and iron ore. The Kingdom of Kush sat at the crossroads of Africa, and it grew wealthy beyond anything its northern neighbor was comfortable with. In a Kerma home, the morning began as it has begun in the Nile Valley for 10,000 years. Water drawn from the river or the well just as the sky begins to lighten. A fire kindled. Porridge of millet or sorghum stirred in a clay pot. Bread baked flat on hot stones. The household was the center of everything. Extended families lived in compounds of interconnected rooms, their walls painted with scenes of cattle and river life. Cattle meant wealth. Cattle meant status. The rulers of Kerma were buried with thousands of cattle. The rulers of Kerma were buried with thousands of cattle skulls arranged in crescent patterns around their tombs, an offering of a scale that still staggers the archaeologists who uncovered them. And then, around 1500 BCE, Egypt came south. For 500 years, Egypt ruled northern Nubia. They built temples, they extracted gold, they assumed the land of Kush would remain a colony forever. They were wrong. By 750 BCE, Kush had rebuilt. Its new capital stood at Napata, near the holy mountain of Jebel Barkal, a flat-topped sandstone formation rising alone from the desert floor. The Kushites believed this mountain was the southern dwelling of the god Amun, and from this sacred place, a king named Pa looked north and saw a divided Egypt, weak pharaohs, warring factions, a civilization that had forgotten itself. Pa did something extraordinary. He did not invade Egypt as a foreign conqueror. He invaded Egypt claiming to restore it, to bring back the old ways, the old gods, the old order that Egypt itself had abandoned. He wrote his own account of this campaign, carved onto a granite stela that still survives today. He described himself not as a Kushite claiming Egyptian land, but as a true pharaoh, reclaiming what was rightfully his. And he won. His son, Taharqa, ruled an empire that stretched from the Mediterranean coast to the confluence of the Blue and White Niles. More than 2,000 miles. Taharqa built temples at Karnak. He restored monuments that had fallen into ruin. He added columns to the temple of Amun at Jebel Barkal, columns that still stand, their hieroglyphs still sharp in the desert light. He is mentioned in the Bible in the Book of Kings as the king who marched out against the Assyrians. The Black Pharaohs, as they are remembered today, were not a historical footnote. They were the last great native dynasty to rule Egypt before the Persians, before the Greeks, before Rome. Walk through Napata at its height, the temple of Amun at the base of Jebel Barkal, its approach lined with ram-headed sphinxes, priests in white linen moving between the columns, the scent of myrrh and acacia smoke, the Nile close enough to hear, the mountain rising above it all, sandstone glowing red in the afternoon sun. A scribe sits in the shade, reed pen in hand, recording the day's tribute. Gold from the eastern mines, cattle from the southern herds. A woman grinds grain in the courtyard, the stone turning, the rhythm older than memory. This was not a kingdom on the periphery of something greater. This was the center. The Assyrians eventually pushed the Kushites back south. Napata faded, but the Kingdom of Kush did not fall. it moved. The new capital, Meroe, sat between the 5th and 6th cataracts, in a region where the Nile bends east and the rain falls more generously than in the desert to the north. Meroe had iron. The hills around the city were rich in iron ore. The Kushites built furnaces. They smelted. They forged. Meroe became one of the great iron-producing centers of the ancient world, its slag heaps still visible today, mounds of black waste that testify to centuries of industry. And at Meroe, the kingdom reinvented itself. It developed its own script, Meroitic, a written language that scholars are still working to fully decipher. It developed its own architectural style, and it buried its kings and its queens in pyramids. The pyramid fields of Meroe contain more than 200 pyramids, more than Egypt. Smaller than the Great Pyramids of Giza, yes, steeper, sharper. Built of sandstone blocks and covered in smooth plaster that once gleamed white against the desert. At their bases, small offering chapels decorated with relief carvings. Some of those carvings depict women ruling alone. The Candaces, warrior queens. The word Candace, Kentake in Meroitic, was not a personal name. It was a title. The Queen Mother, the ruling queen, Amanirenas, Amanishaketo, Shanakdakete. These women led armies. They negotiated with Rome. They appear on temple reliefs, standing over bound captives, their proportions regal, their presence absolute. When the Roman Emperor Augustus demanded tribute from Meroe after a border conflict, the Kushites sent him a bundle of golden arrows. The meaning was clear. The word Candace, Kentake in Meroitic, was not a personal name. It was a title, the Queen Mother, the ruling queen, Amanirenas, Amanishaketo, Shanakdakete. These women led armies. They negotiated with Rome. They appear on temple reliefs, standing over bound captives, their proportions regal, their presence absolute. When the Roman Emperor Augustus demanded tribute from Meroe after a border conflict, the Kushites sent him a bundle of golden arrows. The meaning was clear. Walk now through Meroe at its height. The iron furnaces smoke on the eastern edge of the city. The temples and palaces cluster near the river. The pyramid field spreads to the east, a city of the dead watching the city of the living. In the royal palace, the Candace holds court. Her advisors include generals, priests, and scribes who write in a script that Egypt cannot read. Outside, the streets are busy. Merchants from the Red Sea coast arrive with spices and glass. Herders bring cattle from the Botana grasslands to the east. A potter shapes clay on a wheel that spins as it has spun for 2,000 years. A child learns to write Meroitic on a shard of broken pottery, the first letters of a language that will one day puzzle the world. The Kingdom of Kush did not fall in a single battle. It faded. Trade routes shifted. The Kingdom of Axum rose to the east. By 350 CE, Meroe was no longer a capital. The pyramids stood empty. The furnaces went cold. The Meroitic script was forgotten, its last inscriptions carved and then left to the sand. But the pyramids did not disappear. They are still there. More than 200 of them scattered across the desert of northern Sudan. Less visited than the pyramids of Egypt, but no less real. The pyramids of Meroe catch the same sun that rose over Kerma 4,000 years ago, that rose over Napata when the Black Pharaohs ruled the world, that rose over the Candaces who answered Rome with golden arrows and silence. The Kingdom of Kush was not a footnote to Egypt. It was a civilization in its own right. It built cities when most of the world lived in villages. It smelted iron when others still fought with bronze. It produced kings and queens who saw themselves not as imitators of a greater power, but as the inheritors of something uniquely, completely their own. And tonight, for a few quiet minutes, you walked there. You stood at the Defufa. You heard the Nile at Kerma. You watched the furnaces burn at Meroya. The ancestors held this, and now you know it too. And so the story rests here. For now, sleep well.